Hi, my name is Allison Dorman. I'm in the MBA program at RMU, and I'll be presenting on data collection and algorithm concerns. So just to review briefly the TED Talk we saw, Building a Dystopia, Zainab talks about people in power using artificial intelligence to manipulate us by capturing our attention and our data and selling it to advertisers and others. She describes how persuasion architecture is used to target, infer, and understand individuals, and the fact that high volumes of data are required for the machine learning, which encourages deep surveillance. Some vulnerabilities of millennials to do with artificial intelligence include information flows. So on social media platforms such as Facebook, the algorithm can detect what users' political leanings are and target advertising and value-driven news to those users. So if Facebook detects that you are conservative, it may only show you advertisements for Republican political candidates, and it may only show you Fox News. It may propose potential friends or connections who share similar political beliefs, or social groups that share similar political beliefs. And in that way, it can create kind of a little bubble of just reinforcing information for what you already believe. Another vulnerability is the fact that users don't always understand how they're being manipulated by an algorithm. So the algorithms used on social media platforms are proprietary, which means that we don't know how they filter information, how they decide to present certain information to us and withhold other information. And there's the issue of censorship, that certain posts or stories may not be shared on Instagram in your feed because they have political opinions or they have language that may violate the community guidelines. And that includes using kind of a sarcastic or playful tone, but writing something that may infringe upon the community guidelines. So that is pretty broad. On YouTube, censorship takes the form of monetization. So the algorithm decides whether the content of the video is what the advertisers or the platform want. So if it has political opinions, social opinions, copyright infringement, content that may be deemed inappropriate for certain age viewers, it can always be demonetized, which means that the content creators are not paid for their work, which is a lot of power for the platform to have. And we saw in the TED Talk that voter turnout can be affected by the way in which Facebook presents certain graphics on the election day. So that's a lot of power for Facebook to have, and consumers don't know how that's being used, if it's being used for one political side or the other. So that's an issue. Another thing that the TED Talk mentioned was targeting people on the basis of individual characteristics. She gave the example of someone who has manic depressive disorder or bipolar disorder, who was targeted by people selling flights to Las Vegas, because people with this condition in the manic state may spend money on flights and alcohol and gambling, and use their money in that way. Another vulnerability is the fact that the sheer amount of data that's being collected on consumers is just unlimited. We don't know where it is, where it's going, how it's being used, who it's being sold to, and how many people have it. So there's really no controls or transparency for consumers. Some potential solutions to protect consumers. Zainab talks about how the structures and business models that are in place must change because they favor advertisers and not consumers. She hints at political restrictions as a potential solution. And I tend to agree with government regulation in this space. I think first, though, the government has to understand algorithms and social media platforms and how they're monetized. You can see the picture in the top right corner is Mark Zuckerberg and his team at a Senate hearing. And they're all kind of laughing because the senators who are interviewing them clearly don't understand Facebook's business model and how it works. So that's really kind of important as a hurdle to get over before the government can put limitations in place on these companies and protect consumers in kind of a social contract way. So one example of this that was done successfully is in the EU, where they have increased consumer rights protections, and consumers even have the right to rescind their permission for their data to be used at any time. Moray and the other contributors talk about the 3 tenets of transparency, control, and in-kind value for the exchange of customer data. And they talk about moving beyond compliance to earn consumers' trust for a long-term relationship. And some of the ways in which the exchange of consumer data can be beneficial to both companies and consumers are personalization. So the universe of smart devices. These include smart thermostats, smart light bulbs, smart speakers, smart doorbells that all can be customized and controlled very easily. So Moray and his contributors talk about how this intelligent technology has allowed companies to collect new types of information, and that this personalization, such as constant adaptation to users' preferences, has become central to the product experience. Another example of a beneficial use of customer data is the fact that when a company can support its services through advertising, it can be free to users. So examples of this are social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, which mostly do not have paid user subscriptions at all, and are unlikely to in the future. And also services like free email hosting such as Gmail. Gmail is able to target its users with advertising based on keywords used in email. So it's able to have that service free to consumers. And finally, my references. Thank you.